Hello, and welcome to the 2022 USAID Higher Education Global Evidence Summit. Thank you for joining us today at this inaugural event. We are excited and encouraged to see so many joining from around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. My name is Samantha Alvis, and I am the Senior Advisor for Higher Education at USAID's Center for Education. I have the honor of serving as your MC for today's program and throughout our 3-week event. I will be sharing MC duties with my colleague, Jennifer LeBron. Jennifer, could you join me to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Samantha, and welcome to you all. My name is Jennifer LeBron, and I am the leader of the USAID Higher Education Learning Network, the HELN, or what we refer to as the Helen. I am delighted to be sharing MC duties with Samantha, and I'm very excited to officially launch the Helen at this wonderful gathering of global colleagues. At today's closing session, we will be sharing more about the Helen and its commitment to connecting our members to the ideas, evidence, practices, and people that can help you improve your work and make an impact in your communities. But more on the Helen later today, and actually throughout the summit. For now, I want to turn this back over to Samantha, who can share more about today's agenda and some important information to help you make the most of your time with us. Samantha?
Thank you, Jennifer. USAID's goal in hosting this summit is to expand the higher education evidence base of what works to strengthen higher education, beginning with our 3 interrelated themes: innovation, employability, and private sector engagement. These themes, developed in consultation with our Higher Education Summit Steering Group and Helen Community Consultations, are drawn from the USAID Higher Education Learning Agenda, a collection of learning questions designed to support the generation, capture, and dissemination of evidence to improve the quality and impact of USAID higher education programming. But these questions aren't unique to USAID programming, as we'll learn from our over 80 breakout sessions, poster presentations, and lightning talks. I'm also excited that our last day of the summit will focus on a convergence of these themes and introduce new conversations to explore the role of higher education in crisis and conflict-affected settings and in supporting democracy and student activism. Taken together, this inaugural summit represents an opportunity to improve practices around the world by building and sharing evidence. To begin that opportunity, our focus this first week of the summit is on innovation, and specifically question 6 of the learning agenda. How can higher education systems and institutions play a more active role in the development and strengthening of national and regional innovation ecosystems? But before we get started, I'd like to mention a few reminders. We invite you to take the time to review the summit and today's content by looking to the left of your screen. You'll see a menu of options. You can click on Agenda to view all of our programming for each week. Some of you have already been participating in the summit's networking meetups earlier today. Throughout the summit, we'll have a variety of networking meetups opportunities outside of our formal sessions. We encourage you to sign on a little bit early or stay after the day's programming ends to join into those thematic discussions. As global citizens, it's also important for us to keep in mind that we don't all necessarily share the equal access to the same resources, including internet connectivity. As we feature speakers from across the globe during our live program, we ask that you be patient if we lose connections with any of our speakers or experience any technical difficulties around connection speeds. We encourage you to actively use the chat box to comment and share throughout the program. As you can see, the event is being hosted via the Whova platform. Through the platform, not only will you be able to view all of the sessions, you will also have the opportunity to engage with your fellow attendees on a deeper level. You can send messages, read profiles, and even suggest a virtual meetup with other attendees. You will also be able to add sessions to your personal agenda so that you don't miss any sessions that are of interest to you. There are also sections where you can view documents, videos, resources related to the sessions. The Higher Education Learning Agenda and related documents can be found in the document library. Lastly, captioning is available, and you can access the captions by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of the screen. Additionally, all plenary and concurrent sessions are being recorded and will be posted on the Summit website following the event. Whew, that was a lot of reminders, and now with them out of the way, let's start today's program. It is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Leanna Marr to offer a welcome and remarks on behalf of USAID. Leanna Marr is USAID's acting deputy assistant administrator and acting senior coordinator of United States Basic International Education Assistance in the Bureau for Development, Democracy, and Innovation, or DDI. You know, we love our acronyms at USAID. We're going to do our best to try to spell them out every time. As a USAID Foreign Service Officer since 2004, Leanna has used her expertise in education and crisis and conflict settings, serving in Guinea, South Sudan, North Macedonia, and in Morocco, where she was the program officer and acting mission director. In addition, she has served as USAID's senior education advisor in the Office of Afghanistan and Pakistan Affairs. With that, I'd like to turn this over to Acting Deputy Assistant Administrator Leanna Marr. Leanna, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Samantha, for that introduction, but also thank you for your vision and all of your hard work to bring this summit about. I'm just so excited about this summit. I'd like to welcome everyone to the USAID Higher Education Evidence Summit, our first ever. I'm really excited to welcome attendees from around the world. I was just watching the chat room and seeing folks from all over the globe. And this, again, is our inaugural event focused on expanding evidence on how the core functions of higher education systems can be strengthened to promote social and economic development in USAID. Higher education institutions, your faculty, staff, and students have been a partner in USAID programming since our founding by President Kennedy in 1961. We know that achieving development objectives cannot be done without well-functioning higher education systems and institutions. I'm appreciative to the Center for Education and USAID's Leading Through Learning global platform for the planning of the summit and their efforts to showcase the agency's work that advances our knowledge and evidence base on the role of higher education. This role is not only important for the Center of Education staff, but also for the Bureau for Development, Democracy, and Innovation and the agency as a whole. DDI comprises 4 centers and 5 hubs. The centers serve as USAID's leaders for technical assistance in democracy and governance, economics and market development, education, energy, environment, human rights, and infrastructure. We're just a small bureau covering a lot of area. Higher education plays a role across all of this work. Indeed, it plays a role in every sector where USAID works. Through DDI's Innovation, Technology, and Research Hub, USAID partners with higher education institutions in the United States and partner countries to increase the use of scientific research, tools, and analysis, and to improve development outcomes. Some initiatives include the Partnership for Enhanced Engagement in Research, otherwise known as PEER, which has directly funded scientists and engineers in USAID partner countries for over 10 years who collaborate with US government-funded researchers to address global development challenges. The newest research division program, Building Research and Innovation for Development, Generating Evidence, and Training, otherwise known as Bridge Train, supports partnerships between higher education institutions in USAID partner countries and in the US to develop research, innovation, and training centers for knowledge development. It's aimed at addressing local and national development priorities. In the Local Faith and Transformative Partnership Hub, also known as the LIFT Hub, within DDI, they work to establish partnerships with non-traditional and diverse actors that promote shared values and advance sustainable, inclusive development and public diplomacy. Some initiatives focused on higher education include American Schools and Hospitals Abroad, ASHA, which advances US foreign policy and public diplomacy by supporting partnerships between organizations in the US and abroad that strengthen educational and medical institutions. There's also the Minority Serving Institutions Program, MSI, which conducts outreach to MSIs, including historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving universities, and institutions serving Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander, and Indigenous Americans to raise awareness of USAID partnership opportunities and to increase MSI participation in USAID programs. So you can see we have a lot of programs that really focus on building the bridge between higher education institutions here in the US and abroad. Personally, over my career with USAID as an education officer, I've seen many highly effective higher education programs. One that really is close to my heart was in South Sudan. We brought 14 women together from different ethnic groups to do a master's degree program in secondary education, but it also focused on peace education. We brought the women to the US where they did their master's at Indiana University. All 14 women are back in South Sudan working in education and have formed a strong network of women working to transform not just the education system, but the country as a whole. They're working in the Ministry of Ed, they're working in universities, they're working with women's peace groups, really quite an effective group of women. I'm so proud of that program and of those women and the change that they're making. So I've seen the agenda, it's packed with amazing events, so I don't want to delay any longer. I'm just really pleased that so many of you have joined us this morning. I look forward to the opportunity to listen and learn from the global higher education community over the next 3 weeks and to see our agency's higher education learning agenda advanced by the lessons shared through the agenda. Thank you all.
Thank you, Leanna, for sharing about the many ways that USAID through DDI, and as you said, across the entire agency and technical sectors, are embracing working with and through higher education to advance development through innovation. I now have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, Alexis Bonnell. Alexis is a senior business executive and emerging technology evangelist, and I have to say, we were all very jealous of this title, being able to be an evangelist at Google Cloud. Before joining Google Cloud, she served as the Chief Innovation Officer here at USAID and the Director of Engagement and Communications at the US Global Development Lab, now the Innovation, Technology, and Research Hub in DDI. With more than 24 years of experience in management and communications, Alexis has worked with Wall Street and .coms on initiatives such as the Middle East Peace Plan, Afghan and Iraqi elections, global emergency response, and major logistic operations, and over 20 major programs. Prior to her career in development, Alexis worked as a director of marketing for the Internet Trade Association. She is co-author of the book Get Your Dream Job and has multiple degrees and professional certifications from Pepperdine, New York University, Stanford, Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and other institutions. Alexis, I'm so glad you're able to join us today to help kick off the summit.
Thank you so much. And if you couldn't tell, I am a fan of higher education, but this is so special. I look out and I see who's here, and it's really like a bit of a family reunion for me, both for the time that I got to serve in the Office of Education, as well as the lab and programs that have already been mentioned, like HESN, Peer, DIV, and so many others. And it's just an honor to see so many familiar faces and names, and so many from all around the world. And, as you said, in my most recent role at USAID as the Chief Innovation Officer, it really taught me the power of what I want to talk about today, and that's curiosity. USAID has been a pioneer in valuing evidence-driven decision-making, continuous learning and adaptation, and approaches that make USAID permeable to new ideas from the global genius and solvers around the world, so many of them in higher education. And now, as the emerging technology evangelist at Google, and yes, it's a cool title, came with darker hair than my picture, but very cool title, I know even more how important it is for all of us to be curious. And I want to anchor us in this idea that curiosity is really the currency of innovative organizations, cultures, and even countries. But also today, curiosity is the most critical modern survival skill. What I mean by that is curiosity lets us consider what is beyond the known. And one example of that I remember, and I don't know if we have any of our digital colleagues in the house, but I remember at USAID, about 10 years ago, the first mobile team started, and there was a question of, why do we need mobiles? That's not a development issue. And now I'm sure none of us can imagine really doing the work that we do without thinking about, cell phones or mobiles or digital technology. And so that idea of being able, luckily USAID was curious enough more than a decade ago and really has been able to keep us in the forefront. But also when we reflect on things like USAID's focus on localization, let's not only be curious about what local organizations we might partner with, but let's be curious about our customers. One of the things that I've learned about innovation is that you can't be innovative without being in love with your customer. And what does that look like? It means that we have to have the same voracious appetite for customer insight, feedback, preferences as we do for normal types of impact numbers, evidence, counts, things like that. And it's also really critical when we think about the role of curiosity and evidence and learning, is if you think about it, evidence and learning doesn't matter if you're not evolving. And if it isn't driven by curiosity, otherwise you're relearning the same thing. You're validating the known versus exploring the unknown. But curiosity isn't always easy, right? Sometimes it's really risky and uncomfortable, and it requires bravery. I'm going to say that again. Being curious requires bravery. One of the great examples when I thought USAID and our partners were really brave was being able to do things like cash benchmarking, asking ourselves, are our programs providing the most value and impact? Or are there alternative ways? And so in the cash benchmarking example, we literally looked and measured results against the equivalent of giving people the same amount of money as the program intervention, or even more money, and really being willing to kind of take in that evidence, take in that insight, and tweak how we might do programming. Another great example that I loved was when we looked at chlorine dispensers, and there was a moment where they weren't having the impact that we thought they might have. And so going in and really digging and saying why that was and being able to make a few tweaks. Another form of bravery was the woman, she was a wedding dress designer who showed up to the Ebola Grand Challenge workshop because she thought she had something to offer. And you know what? She did. She got partnered with a really amazing team of engineers, and they created some of the most advanced personal protective equipment. So this idea of really being brave, being audacious, and I love that USAID uses models like challenges, prizes, and ventures to be able to look outside. But part of that is also being able to look outside our own expertise. And this is what I love about the higher education solution model, really tapping into that curiosity engine that higher ed can provide. And what that also means is making space to be curious with others and being able to leverage that. But I'll also share what I learned about what might make it hard to be curious. The first barriers are things like fear of risk or punishment. I remember a number of different innovators who came to us because maybe we set the wrong measurement with them. And they came to us and they were brave enough to say, we think you're measuring the wrong thing. We want to change our program. We want to tweak how we're being measured for this reason. And if you think about it, that actually takes a lot of bravery, right? We'd already accepted kind of how we were going to distribute funds. They could have just taken those funds, but they came back to us and said, we really want to make sure we're being measured for the value to that customer. And they were willing to work with us. So again, being able to overcome that fear and have those discussions. Also, as I mentioned with cash benchmarking, sometimes we fear what it might look like to bring disconfirming data, right? What happens if what I assume is working actually isn't? And how do I navigate that? And that's what I really value about USAID being that continuous learning organization. But also sometimes we can be our own barriers when it comes to curiosity. And this was a journey I had to take myself on in trying to be innovative. And that was, I had to recognize what I call the me, the we, the us, and the them. And so, for example, the me, I have to recognize how my own self-identity might be tied up with my sector, right? So if I'm championing education or maternal and child health, and someone tells me they need water, Am I able to listen? Am I able to hear that? And, to be able to think about how my relevance might contribute to that, instead of only saying, no, you just don't understand how much you need this thing that I do. So part of what I had to do was overcome my own sense of identity and to be able to listen and to be curious. The second, though, the we, is this idea that oftentimes sectorally, we are always surrounded by people who value the same things, right? Whether that be democracy or governance or health issues. And if we're always around people who value the same thing, who have the same sense of identity, then again, it can be much harder to stay curious, to take risks, because we surround ourselves with things that are reinforcing. So again, stepping back and think, how am I curious, maybe beyond my sector or beyond the group of experts or beyond the methods that I'm using? The us is really this idea of, how do I look at how I structure things to be curious? So as an example, doing a normal program might be one way, but doing a challenge, a prize, a partnership with a higher education institution, changing up that process, doing something with a local organization, is another way that people exercise curiosity. And finally, what I really love and what I really want us to focus on is being curious about the them. Again, that customer, who are they? How do you fall in love with them? Understand how they tick, what they want, what they need, so that we can be providing the most value possible. And what I want to frame, as I kind of bring my remarks to a close, is, why does this matter? Why now? What's different? And I want to remind us, about the fact that the pace of change and the rate of adaptation is only going to increase. We used to have 99-year spreads between industrial revolutions, then 10 years, and now we're on a yearly discovery cycle. And what that means is that as higher education experts or public servants, a lot of our job is to help determine what elements of that rapid human discovery should we be championing to bring to scale to humanity. And that's a really important job, but it really means we have to be curious. It also means that we're going to be confronted with the tidal wave of information that's only just starting, right? And so to be able to be curious with having more information than ever, and what are the questions we're going to ask? How are we going to probe that data? It might be, how is my program really reflecting social equity? It might be overlaying climate data. But as we have more information available, that question of how we're going to exercise our curiosity at that. And I think for many of you in higher education, you recognize that the graduates that are entering the workplace today, the workplace, the work, the sector, that might be fundamentally different from the time they graduate, right? And really that idea of treating education as a journey of curiosity, not a destination, right? And the way that we think about this, we call it living systems leadership. It's the idea, that if we accept that change is happening faster than ever and that new information will constantly be added to my decision construct, how do I intentionally create programs and structures designed to adapt, to evolve, and to change? And I think higher ed plays a critical role in this. Higher ed institutions are often the place where new innovations, new ideas are nourished. And part of that is because they exist as a place, where people are in that learning environment, but they provide the bandwidth and expectation of curiosity. The final example I'll leave you with is something that I've gotten to participate in recently, and that was helping a major medical school understand how to help more medical students graduate. What we saw is we began to understand that certain cohorts struggled more with completing med school than others, and it might be because of financial strain, or even the fact that they entered med school with education gaps that others didn't have. We were curious. We wanted to know why. So we used artificial intelligence and kind of mapped a lot of the data. And what we found is that we were actually able to intervene, whether that was with financial aid or tutoring structures, to ensure that more people graduated. And I'm really excited to say right now that our initial results have in essence taken those cohorts from a 61% graduation rate to a 94%. All of that because we were curious. We wanted to know why. We wanted to know how. We wanted to know what we might do. And so in that spirit, I just want to thank you all for your work around the world, making the world a better place. And I want to encourage us all, let's continue to adapt. Let's continue to have continuous learning. But most important, as you complete your journey on the summit, please stay curious. Thanks so much.
Alexis, thank you so much for that inspiring talk. I saw a lot of great conversations happening in the chat with folks, really the message resonating, especially the me, we, us, and them. I hope that we can all continue to bring that sense of curiosity and bravery and how we engage over the course of the summit and as we continue to work on our higher education programming. Thank you again for joining us. In the spirit of honoring curiosity, I would like to invite you all to share more about your curiosities as we begin this summit. Each day, we will invite you to share what more would you like to learn pertaining to today's theme using a virtual whiteboard. There is a link available in the chat now for you to add some initial thoughts. We'll be inviting you to continue to contribute to the Further Learning Interest whiteboard throughout the summit, and we will review the boards collectively on our last day of the summit. Thank you in advance for sharing. Now we will get ready to move into our research and practice sessions. Our research and practice sessions contribute to what works in higher education related to the summit's key themes and key takeaways, such as tools and lessons learned that attendees could apply in your practice. You will join your session by clicking on the session name and the agenda on your left menu panel. Following this block of concurrent sessions, we'll have a brief 15-minute break before the second block of research and practice sessions begin. If you haven't done so already, we invite you to view our pre-recorded poster and lightning talk sessions. These presentations are available for asynchronous viewing in Whova. The presentation teams for those presentations will be participating in live Q&A sessions, so you can watch the sessions and then hear from those presenters during their live Q&A. I now send you off to learn, share, discover, and be curious. We'll see you soon back in the closing session later today. Enjoy the summit.